And this is different than anything, any clinic around.
Workouts that are tailored for her, and that really makes a difference.
It's really personal. I've gotten way more mobile, stronger, flexible. Just everything just improves me to the next level.
Welcome to the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast, where we push sports performance and physical therapy to its apex. We change the game by bringing together the brightest minds in the field to offer best practices and question how things are done today. I'm your host, Mike Quintans, physical therapist and expert in sports orthopedics. I'm living my dream and opened a clinic that unites all elements of sports medicine under one roof to drive recovery and performance outcomes. What's happening, Performance Therapy Nation? This is Mike Quintans, your host of the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast. I'm joined today by Jordan Quinones for part 2 of our podcast series on performance training, and we can't wait to dive into some philosophies of training. Programming, Jordan's influences, and how he trains today is more challenging than it's ever been. But first, I want to thank you guys, the listeners, for showing the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast some love. The first week of our launch, and we've received several 5-star reviews. I have to say that's pretty damn cool to have listeners share their opinions on the show. So keep them coming. Quick shout out to nbon54 for his review or her review and comment, which read, Q is always clear and concise with ideas and discussions. And clearly he has put that manner of talking to his patient into his podcast. Can't wait to listen to some more. So nbon, I appreciate you. And so let's give this reviewer some of what they want. All right, I'm here with Jordan Quinones. Jordan is a strength conditioning coach at the Physical Therapy and Wellness Institute, Newtown Square. He has several credentials in strength training, and I can tell you firsthand that he has as much passion as I've seen when it comes to technique and doing what's best for every athlete or average Joe that walks into his gym. Without further ado, let's get into it, JQ. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Good, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, this is awesome. Part 2. I'm pretty stoked about this because we're going to dive into some stuff I love to talk. We kind of do this on the day-to-day anyway. So let's talk about programming. Dive into it. What have been your influences?
So there's been a lot. There's been many. I think, if you listen to the last one, just as far as my history, I've tried to take, what I've felt would help my athletes the most from every kind of modality I've been experienced or been exposed to, right? So, from CrossFit, I've kind of learned a little bit about the group workout mentality, how we can, get a little bit more motivation and build a little bit more kind of camaraderie within the groups of athletes, how to effectively kind of create that anaerobic conditioning environment, and I guess push a little bit, kind of go into that kind of red line area, while still kind of being safe, right? From the Olympic weightlifting background, right? I've taken the power explosive movements, kind of used those to the fullest extent, right, in the workouts. Again, to the degree where the athletes can manage them, and many athletes can manage them, whether it's middle school or to high school, right? From the gymnastics, the bodyweight stuff, right? So all the pull-up holds, all of the midline work, right, that gymnastics entails, all the single leg, work, the balance work, I would still consider gymnastics, right? And then from the traditional strength conditioning background, you're getting into, again, the sprint work, the speed work, right? How would a team kind of train for a particular sport, and then how do you apply that in a small group environment? So there's been a ton, and I mean there's and that goes back to there's this guy, the Rossi Namid, who was before CrossFit, he was making sandbags, he was flipping tires, he was swinging sledges before that was even cool, right? He was making his own dumbbells. There's just a ton of things. I think any good strength coach would probably tell you they take the best out of what they've experienced, what they've learned, and as long as they can kind of digest it and kind of put it out there in an understandable manner, they use the best tools they can.
I think the coolest part about watching you and your programming and how it's, I would say, developed over the past 10 months now,
Sure.
Is that you change things. frequently. It's never like the same program, the same
Right.
Monday, the same Wednesday.
Yep.
Like your things, your program's constantly changing, and you sometimes, I would say, like this light bulb goes off, which is like that means you're learning, right?
Mhm.
Like you're being inspired,
Right.
and when this light bulb goes off, you're like, all right, I'm gonna like put some of this in there
Mm-hmm.
and sprinkle some of this throughout the entire program
Right.
for months.
Yep.
That's been really cool to see. Like, where does that come from?
I mean, I guess it's really just the ability to be humble and know that you should be able to kind of learn at any given moment, right, from any given athlete. You know, I think I obviously have ways that I think certain things should be done or certain kind of like programming should be done, but then an athlete will come in and maybe tell a story, or maybe I'll see someone on the PT side, or maybe I'll kind of hear something like, that makes a lot of sense, or like, and being able to kind of, again, be humble, look at that and understand like, okay, that's maybe a better way of going about this. Maybe it's not, or maybe like that concept is, I can kind of integrate in another way, right? So it's kind of always keeping an eye, right, out for movements or information that could help, you know, your athletes or clientele. And be like, you know, having the you know, the modesty to understand, or like, okay, like let's try that, let's do that, like that could be a better way to approach it, you know. So
That's your greatest weapon, in my opinion. Your modesty and
Right.
ability to kind of like put some thought into new ideas, different ideas.
Yeah.
Because anyone in this field could tell you and would agree that there are some stubborn, I don't want to say a bad word, people in this profession, both PT, medicine in general, but PT and sports training, especially. How many wars are on freaking Instagram,
right.
or Twitter or Facebook about like, oh, you're doing that wrong, or, you know, this lift is inappropriate for that athlete, or
Right.
that's not a real exercise. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And I've been that way in the past. You know, I think as they almost as like a young gun, almost like when you're in like the, you know, the mid to late 20s, you think that you learn something and that's the way, you know, like you understand it, so that's the way it's going to be forever.
I'm
you know?
right. Everyone else
Right.
is wrong.
If someone says
you
something else,
know
like,
nothing. I know everything.
Get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. But I think it's kind of like the, you know, the continuum of coaching, right? Like that first time you learn something, like, oh, I'm like, I know everything. I'm the best, right? I can handle any athlete. Then you encounter a scenario where your tools were not cut out to you know, assist certain athlete in a particular environment or a particular situation, and you have to swallow that. You have to learn from that lesson, right? And you have to learn from that, or else you're going to get left behind.
Can you give me an example of that? I'm putting you on the spot. Like, is there, and I can tell you as a PT, I'll give you a second to think about
Sure.
it. As a PT, I can give you 100 examples
Right.
of someone that walked in the clinic. First, the initial eval, I'm like, I got this. Can't
Well-
walk. And then I was like stubborn and thinking like, no, they're not doing their part. I'm doing my part, and they're not seeing the results. That's not on me.
Right.
And you learn quick. Like, this wasn't a layup.
Right.
Like I, you know, go home, do your research, and figure out like what you're missing. Get your resources lined up, everything.
Right.
So I can't, like, there's so many examples, but like just delayed recovery as a result of stubbornness.
I have one. I think you know, the first kind of year of my athletic, you know, coaching focus was filled with them. Looking back now, I think that I was very much kind of stuck in the traditional barbell mindset, barbell bilateral, right? So we were doing things I like to do, right? We were doing back squats and deadlifts and push jerks and cleans and snatches, and like, yeah, well, they can definitely, you know, make someone more athletic and develop power and speed and precision and strength, right? Is that the best for a ninth grade baseball player? Probably not. You know, so there's a ton of scenarios where, looking back now, like, while the kids enjoyed that, and luckily there were no, you know, injuries or significant injuries along the way that, you know, could have, you know, cost me my career, but it's definitely makes you kind of take a back seat and kind of take a broad picture or broad view of your program and be like, okay, was that the best way to help that athlete, or was it the way that I was most comfortable with at the time? And was I being stubborn, not seeing that sooner? You know, so not that I'm going to beat myself up the whole time, but sure, like, and that's how you grow, that's how you learn, right? Not making the past mistakes again and again. You know,
I have the same mentality. I think that's why we get along so well when it comes to talking about this kind of stuff, is that we both have open minds.
Sure.
And you've taught me so much in the time we spent together. And like a background in football, especially when you get to college, like where you're not the best player on the field,
Right.
and how humbling that can be when you're getting screamed at in front of like your parents at the spring game. Like it's like, damn.
Yeah.
Like, but you got to adapt, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. You got to do. You got to reflect and see what you can do better.
Yeah.
I admire that. That's special.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some of that. Like you said barbell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go right into it. Louis Simmons, West Side Barbell.
Mm-hmm.
I started looking into like them. There was there's a podcast. You shared it with me. I think it was West Side Barbell. It was
Yeah, just Louis'
Louis
podcast. Yeah.
Simmons. It might have been his, but I think he was a guest on. I forget who it was. It was Shrugged Barbell.
Oh, like Travis Mash.
Yes.
Travis Mash. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that was-
the Mash Elite.
He
one.
was like, tell me
Yeah.
about conjugate lift. And
Yeah.
I like studied that. I
Yeah.
listened to it, no joke, probably 20 times.
Right.
And started studying conjugate method. I just didn't
Sure.
know that much about it. So there's so many different methods out there, and I'm curious to get your influences or your opinion on your influences and so forth.
So again, I mean, I think as you start out, especially as a younger coach, you want to apply a system that works, right? So I've certainly done my fair share of research, like on the conjugate method, on the traditional, West Side Barbell method, on the kind of high-low splits, right? So there's a ton of proven programs like Wendler's 5-3-1, so you kind of go through the list of things that are proven time and time again, and you want to apply those, right? But the difference in this scenario is you're not like, let's say I was working with a team that I work with every single day, same kids, and I had access to them 5 days a week from 3 to 5 every day, right? It's a lot easier to integrate a system, right, in that scenario, like conjugate West Side, knowing exactly what kids are coming in every single day, knowing their maxes, right, every single day. But in the private sector environment where you are, some kids come 2 days a week, maybe they come only Monday, Tuesday, maybe they have, 8 games on a weekend, and they're coming, and they can't really be pushed to like, okay, you're doing 85% for 3 this week. That's what the program says. You're doing it, right? So you have to kind of know your population, right? And you have to have the program fit the athlete, not the other way around. And I think that's where sometimes you can get in trouble as far as trying to apply a certain system or method. That's very good, and it's proven. But it doesn't always match with the athletes that you have or the people that you have.
Right, what's it proven for? Like Louis Simmons works with power lifters.
Right.
They're so...
Louis Simmons works with people that are, consuming 4,000 plus calories a day, that are there 6 days a week, that are there for 2 hours every single time, and he knows exactly, so...
What are they competing for?
Right, exactly. They know exactly the parameters they're competing for. They have 3 things. They know exactly what's coming up, right? And... not to say that makes it easy, right? He's one of the best ever. So I'm just saying that he knows exactly what he's getting. Like he's fitting his program to that, right? But when you try to take that, in a vacuum and apply that to like a group of 14-year-olds, like doesn't work that way, right? Some things would still work, right? So yeah, okay, maybe doing like a heavier day and a dynamic day, like that kind of stuff, right? So that's where we get into kind of taking the best parts out of something. You kind of can play with that. Okay, what is he doing when he does that? All right. You kind of boil it down to its kind of like most basic function, which is to like balance a heavier day and a lighter, faster day. All right. That makes sense. We can do that. Right. So that's kind of where you have to, again, learn, right? Know, and that takes experience and time, like knowing what a particular focus is or purpose is in a programming and knowing how it can work in your environment.
I love every second of that. You're diving into the philosophies that Louis Simmons is applying in West Side Barbell and trying to understand what the foundation of it, right? And then taking that foundation and saying, okay, how can I implement that into what I do? And that's why it works for his athletes. The resistance, the amount of resistance, the sets and reps, like, yes, those are all extremely important, obviously, in what he does. However, that's for that target audience,
right?
For his population,
right?
What are the biggest challenges you have to deal with in the population you see here? Which I can say firsthand is you get every kind of, different ages. You have baseball, you have football, you have lacrosse, and sometimes all in the same session.
Right.
So, typically right now, at least with COVID going on, you have 3, 4 at most.
Yep.
Usually it's like 5, 6.
Mhm.
Typically pre-COVID.
Yep.
So tell me what that's like, because they all have the same, for the most part. There's some modifications, I believe,
Right.
but same program, same
Right.
thing that day.
So again, I mean, you kind of get back to, all right, what is the most basic goal, right, out of a day? You know what I mean? All right, for the most part, you know, depending on the athlete, you kind of want to get them in there. You want to get them doing a great balance of, you know, push, pull, hinge, squat, like run, jump, right? So you want to kind of have them, you want to have them being athletes, right? That's what they're here for. They want to become better athletes. They're not there to compete in a back squat contest, right? So it's really easy, right? Especially, you know, with kids who also get enamored by this, like focus on just strength, right? Like, oh man, their numbers are going up. Boom, they're getting better. All right, you can see it. Like that's one metric. So what I want to do is pretty much provide a balanced challenge to them every single day that I know is going to make them better. Now, within that context, I also want to, again, tailor my program to the specific athlete. So the benefit of having the smaller groups, right, the 3, 4, 5, 6, is I can change the program for that day, for that athlete, depending on what I know they either have coming up, what they've dealt with the past weekend, or just how they're feeling that day, right? I had a discussion today with some kids, you know, because every single day I ask them, hey, how you feeling, right? What's going on? What'd you do before this? What do you have coming up? And a lot of time, and they got a lot better at telling me exactly what, you know, was what's going on. But a kid today, like, didn't sleep the night before, right? Didn't tell me that till we got through 3 heavy sled push sets. So, and he's kind of dragging and he's feeling bad about himself. I'm like, dude, you didn't sleep. Like, it's okay to not perform that well. And I was like, but going forward, like, tell me that I could obviously not push you or give you a better movement, maybe in lieu of a heavy sled push, which if I didn't sleep at all the night before, I would also feel pretty terrible, you know, doing that. So, that's kind of the challenge, right? Is you know, providing a general kind of workout that will help all athletes, right? Or as many as you can in that kind of day. And then also knowing what athlete is coming to that session and giving them the appropriate dosage or modification that they need, you know, off of that workout, I guess.
I think that's almost impossible. Again, from my small PT background.
It'll never be perfect, but yeah.
No, I mean, I shouldn't say like it's impossible. That sounds extremely difficult to do because now you're having conversations with each athlete before, and you're identifying what some of their challenges have been over the last 24 hours, how they're responding, which I know in talking to a patient can take, that can take, you know, 5 minutes right there. Right. And if you're talking to them as a whole and they're comfortable around each other, I'm sure you can get different ones saying different things, and maybe that makes everyone more comfortable in talking about what they're going through.
And that is the thing. It's having to remind them, like, hey, you can be honest. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you if you had McDonald's 10 minutes before this, right? I might give you a little flack, sure, right? But
it's a gym. What do you
right, I'm not going to like beat you up, make you feel bad about it. I really just want to make sure, like, okay, maybe we're not pushing on the assault bike today, you know, right? Because, you know, I don't want to see that food in the gym, right? So, but yeah, that's kind of the difference. Whereas, you know, when I you know, trained at Malvern as for a high school football team, you have 40 kids in there. Then it does become more of like, okay, here's the program, right? Now you're doing this here, you know, you can work up percentages, right? Because at that point you need to kind of make sure everybody's kind of going towards the same direction. You know, you can't maybe talk to every single kid, although, you know, some programs that I follow doing a lot better as far as like a readiness surveys every single day, you know, so you can be as individualized as possible, right, to each day. So I think across the board, a lot of the best programs are always trying to find a way to meet the athlete in the middle, you know, fit that program to that athlete, not the other way around.
I can't harp on that enough. Your willingness to adapt, whether you're going to Malvern Prep to, you know, do their lifting program that day, or you're in here with, you know, two high school female soccer players,
some Irish dancers on the side, you know,
right, really. I mean, generally, like 10-year-old, 11-year-old Irish dancers. High school soccer players, female, and 2 Malvern football players, and a Division I baseball player. I mean, that's challenging to do. So, are you aware of that challenge?
I mean, I am. I think it's fun though, and it's also, I mean, again, it's like the power of language, right? So sometimes they're doing the same thing. You know, sometimes maybe they're all doing single leg RDL that day, right? But with the football player, you relate to them from a hey, here's how you when you're on the field, you're on a single leg a lot. You need to be able to explosive from one leg a lot, right, and be able to deliver or receive a blow from this position. As a dancer, like, hey, posture is everything, right? You need to be able to hold this position with proper posture, the soccer play, right? So you can kind of, again, not only meet them in the middle with the movement, but meet them in the middle with the language and create that kind of emotional buy-in just with the way you're describing the movement at the same time. So you can increase the effectiveness, right, of the same movement just by choosing your words correctly.
We do the same thing on the side of the wall. To connect with a patient, client that is a 12-year-old, cross-country runner or an Irish dancer, I have to be able to communicate to them. I understand what you're going through, and this is what I see. This is what I know about your sport. And if you don't know, I tell them I don't know anything about squash.
Right.
I'm gonna dive into it. I know it's like tennis, and I know that's different than pickleball. But like I got to dive into it. I'm gonna go home and do some research.
Right.
I think that honesty and being genuine with the patient client is everything. It's paramount to their buy-in.
Absolutely. I think that the trust that gets created between from the time you initially meet them and to the time that you're training them, and then that is so important as far as the effectiveness of your program. If you have 100% buy-in and trust, you could have the most basic, boring program on there, and it'll be extremely effective because they're all in on it, right? And they're doing everything to 100%, and vice versa too. You could have the best program ever, but if you're not able to communicate and build that trust, you won't get. Doesn't matter. You won't get as much out of it as you could. So,
and that's cool to be able to talk sports technique and understand what they're going through on the field or or whatever it may be. All right, so walk me through a daily program, and I'm also curious to hear about how you change the program, because you have athletes, I've seen it jump in. Maybe it's like one kid's first week and another kid's like 8th week or 6th week, or I say kid, could be an adult.
Right.
How do you modify? That's got to be a huge challenge.
So I usually kind of follow a more of like a undulating periodization, meaning that I kind of wave through every 3 weeks, right? So I'll go from higher reps, right, to lower reps, right, over the course of 3 weeks, and then kind of get into some tempo work, obviously as the weight gets maybe a little bit heavier or the reps get a little bit lower, right, to increase time under tension. So I'll kind of wave through every 3 weeks and then kind of start back over, right, depending on the time of the year. Now, again, that being said, that's a very loose, right, framework, because again, there are athletes always jumping in or taking vacation here or starting a season here, and then so it can really kind of vary day to day, right? So just for example, for Monday, right, so we're on week 3 of this kind of current cycle, right? So we have our prep work where we're trying to get the body ready with some assault bike, with some lunge matrix, a single leg RDL hold, and some scap work, right? So we'll go through that. We'll move for 8 to 10 minutes. That's kind of the time where I'll be kind of talking to the athletes, seeing how they're feeling, right? What's coming up, what just happened in that week, right? We always kind of start with that JTS aspect. So we're always starting with some jump through sprint, right? And that's something that I've really kind of bought into, that I've seen from Boyle and then those guys that really know how to train athletes and do it really well. So I want them moving explosively, right? Them being athletes off the gate when they're fresh, right? I want them to being those fast, dynamic movements when they have the most, energy and power. Right, exactly. So, we did some med ball slams. We did some short sprints there. I timed the sprints, right? Because, I do like to have the metrics. We're not just like throwing things at walls every day. Like there is a periodization. There is some, actual progression here, right? And I do want to kind of see that over time. That being said, again, I will always change it if I need to. And then we have some, lateral bounding. So we have our jump through sprint there in the beginning, right? So we're moving fast. We have adequate rest, right?
Sorry, I'm going to stop you just 1 second. I'm sorry. Jump through sprint. Tell me about that.
So,
I saw that before. JTS.
JTS, right? So, jump through sprint. So I think I got this from Boy. I forget. But, I mean, it's pretty common. So, again, it's literally just that. It's a jump, a throw, and a sprint. Sometimes not always one of each, right? But it's the time when you're bouncing around, man. You're being an athlete, right? You're throwing something. You're moving fast. You're doing fast sprints, right? You're throwing a med ball as hard as you possibly can, right? With adequate rest. You know what I mean? So it's a time when you're being most explosive, right? Usually in the workout. So jump through a sprint, right? So there's very athletic, moves there. And again, ones that can easily, I guess previously, I didn't focus on enough. Right? That's kind of what goes back to some things that like I was a little too focused on the strength aspect. So I would be doing 30 minutes of back squats and then maybe would do like a run that day, but was at the end, not the beginning, so that's kind of where I really changed.
And what I like about that is the throw. People think like, oh, I gotta like throw a ball or something. Like, no, we're talking like slamming a ball on the ground, like that's a throw, right?
Yeah.
Or pushing a ball into the wall,
right?
Like that's
you can throw it laterally, you can scoop, you can throw it overhead, you can reverse throw it, right? You go outside, you throw as high as you can, you throw as hard as you can into the ground, So any varieties is the king there usually, for the general athlete, right? You want them moving in various planes of motions, explosively and giving them exposure to just different things that they may not get, right, in a normal, school training environment or just like a normal program.
Isn't that nice to be able to implement something that isn't necessarily their sport-specific movement? Like, you know what I mean? You're not doing like a rotational movement with every single person, or you're not, maybe they're like, for example, there is rotation in Irish dancing, but not a ton of rotation, like there is in baseball or something like that, or lacrosse. But you're implementing athletic movements in your population.
But
No.
I think what you're getting into here as well is the common the athlete that will do their same athletic movement all the time, thinking that like, okay, this is the answer. I'm going to do this same thing and I'm going to throw, or I'm going to do this same routine or this same kind of set of steps, and the body's in the same position all the time. And that's where you get into the overuse, the compensation, right? So even if like I have an Irish dancer, I would probably still have her throwing a med ball, because why not? It bounces back out. I'm not going to, it's a light medicine ball. They're doing proper technique, obviously. They do obviously a intelligent progression to that point, right? But it never hurts to know how to produce power rotationally, even if you need to resist rotation. You know what I mean? So having the body able to move, right, in a variety of ways to balance that out and not create any sort of overuse injuries, which we see probably a little too much of, right? Is immensely beneficial,
I dig it, dude. I dig it. All right, let's move on from jump throw pass.
Yeah. So then we get into, we do get into some strength work, right? So, we do have our front squat. We had our, we had our row iso hold, right? So we're on the bench, we're holding dumbbells, right? So, and then we have some sort of midline usually. So I usually have, a balance of a lower body, knee dominant movement like your front squat. The band of row iso holds and upper body, pull isometrically. And then the plank body saw would be, your anti extension, I guess you would say. So I have that kind of balance there, right? So boom, I got knee dominant. All right, I got upper body pull, and I got a midline there, right? And then after that, and that's when you're giving them adequate rest again. This is your heaviest kind of strength movement of the day, so you want some rest in there.
So sets can be 4, 5.
Yeah, so usually
3.
it's 3 to 4. I think one thing I've kind of learned over the years too is less is more sometimes with that, right? So I'd rather take a little bit warming up, getting to a nice adequate starting weight than spending 5 or 6 sets on the strength, right? And that's kind of one thing, like, okay, previously I would do 6 sets of something, right? Kind of very, very West Side-esque, right? Like, and you would accumulate some good volume on a strength movement, right? But you're pretty much smoked after that, right? And that itself takes about 40 minutes to get through. Like if you're getting through 6 sets of front squats at a decent weight, even with, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid, like that takes a lot of time. And what are you sacrificing to do that is really the question.
I was just going to say, that's the question. What are you sacrificing?
Right.
And
something's got to give.
In Irish dance, for throwing a ball, you're not sacrificing anything, right? But if you have an Irish dance to do front squats, 5 sets or 6 sets,
right,
you're sacrificing what else they could have been
right.
doing.
And yeah, their legs will get stronger, sure. But is that exactly what they need? Maybe, maybe, but usually not. Anyway, so yeah, usually 3 to 4 sets there, and again with adequate rest. So, that was that, and then the last part you usually end with some sort of not challenging, but you get the heart rate up, get moving. So it's somewhat of a conditioning piece at the end, but really it's still focus on the quality of movement. So that's when I'll kind of balance out the rest of the day, right? So we'll have a landmine press. Okay, single arm press. We have a single leg RDL iso hold with some weight this time. and then a single arm carry, right? So I love the carry as one of like the foundational movement patterns, right? So pretty balanced day. We have a knee dominant, right? We have a row, upper body pull. We have a midline. We have a press, upper body press, right? We have a hip dominant, okay? And then we have a carry, right? So balanced day, right? So I'm trying, again, give them, especially Monday, first day of the week, I want to kind of get them into the week, right? Nothing's too crazy on there. Get them in there, moving well, moving confidently.
So
right?
those last three that you just mentioned there kind of complete the, and I've gone, you say hip and knee dominant. I think some others, at least for me, I know that as like, okay, I want to do some type of a squat and a hinge, right?
Yep, exactly. Same thing. Same exact thing.
Same language, right? You
Yep.
got to pull,
Yep.
you got to push, you
Yep.
got to press, and you got your carry.
Yep.
Like in my opinion, like the foundation of a balanced lift program.
Exactly.
Nailed it. Okay. So now at the end though, what I want your thoughts on what I picked up here was like more like core based with those last three, right? Like
Yep.
the carry.
So a little more balance, a little more unilateral based there, and that's when. So I'll put a time on that. So that's to be a 9-minute density there. So density for us just means okay, we are setting a timer, and you're gonna move through this. Your quality will dictate your pace, but you're going to kind of move through at a 9-minute pace. And once the timer goes on, usually, that's kind of where like the CrossFit-y kind of thing comes in there. Because you start moving, and then kids can naturally like move a little bit faster, right? So I take that into account and make sure the movements that are in that density portion are not nearly as complex, right, as the ones in the strength or the JTS. So they can kind of attack it a little bit.
I think
right?
you're implementing a degree of stress.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's good because that's what they have to deal with.
Right.
Like when you're on the field or you're on the pitch or on the court,
Right.
Or at a dance recital competition, there's stress.
Right.
So now you have a clock ticking.
Right. There's going to be times where you got to perform under fatigue, right? Absolutely.
Nailed it. Love it, dude. That's an awesome program. So will you build off of, so that was week 3. Will you build off of week 1 and 2 with those?
Yep.
Or, okay.
So for example,
similar
the first week of that maybe would have been front squat for 6 or 5, right? And maybe like the row, or maybe it would have been upper body pull, but not a hold, right? So not everything is a straight progression, right? So if it's an upper body pull movement, it might just be a TRX row hold one day and a prone dumbbell row, so similar, but, different, right? So I'll kind of progress laterally rather than up. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Whereas, if focus on that one is a little, let's call it, knee dominant or like some leg pushing strength, right? Maybe the front squat is a focus there. And, we're definitely progressing on that every week. We're either going, up and weight, down in reps or something like that. But then we have our other ones can kind of keep them fresh, right? So we don't get too routine, and the emotional kind of engagement stays fairly high.
Do you track resistance that the athletes use in terms of like 1%?
Not
percentage of one rep max.
I don't base it off 1 rep max. I just felt that when I did that in the past, they got a little bit too into the numbers, where to the point where they're like comparing numbers before the session, like I'm doing this thing, which can be good, but when it starts again to take away what the focus of these sessions should be, that's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna go more for a like RPE, like like your perceived exertion,
Speak my language, dude.
right? So I want to make sure that
RPE, rate of perceived exertion,
right, rate of perceived. So how does this feel right now? Okay, this should feel like an 7 out of 10. Right now that's your starting set.
Meaning like, so just to explain to our audience, a 10 is like I couldn't.
10
do
is
one more
literally
rep.
you barely got the last rep and you're very, very challenged, right?
And the 7 is
right. 7's like you maybe could have done 3 more reps. Like you were challenged, but you had a couple more in the tank.
You're looking for a 7 to 8.
Right. Hey, here's where you're starting, and also it's a way again to communicate, right? Because we do have those athletes that jump in mid-cycle and like they don't have percentage, and that's the thing too. Like, oh, I feel like I missed out on this like testing day. Now I don't have percentage to work on for the next cycle. It's like, man, I don't want them coming in day 1 and feeling excluded immediately, right? So RPE is a great way to kind of get both sides of the coin there.
I have to spend time in explaining that to patients and athletes like that. I want you to feel challenged. Like a 7, 8 out of 10 is perfect.
Yep.
And you're going to require adequate rest, at least
Right.
for that muscle group. before you start your next set, to write a program for somebody based on 1 rep max, in my opinion, a percentage, and have the expectation that they're going to be able to do 4 weeks from now 80% of their 1 rep max for 5 reps on deadlift is, in my opinion, complete BS, frankly, because you don't know how they slept that night.
Right.
You know, you don't know if their dog was throwing up all night, they couldn't sleep, and they didn't have a good breakfast, or they got in a fight with their wife or their mom or whatever. That
and that's the thing too. I mean, and I've had clients in the past that were just like Olympic weightlifters, and like that's all they were doing, and we knew when a competition was coming up, we knew like, okay, then it makes sense to have, okay, we're working off your 1 rep max of the snatch, and we know the percentages, and we can build a program around that because we know what's coming up. We know exactly what they've done before, right? We know what they're dealing with. We can kind of get that day-to-day stress stuff. Okay, but again, that is a scenario where I would have it in, right? And when I try to apply that to a younger, bigger group, while it worked to an extent, there's way more kind of pitfalls than kind of pros to that approach, in my experience.
All right, so walk me through the first appointment. You know, dad comes in with his son, and or just, you know, the Joe Schmo comes in, weekend warrior,
right?
Come in and meet with you, and once again involved in your training sessions.
Sure.
How does that go?
So I had one today. So the initial consult is an incredibly important time, right? So to kind of like sow the seed of that trust, right? So this is when you already begin to kind of build that relationship of hey, I'm here to kind of to make your son or daughter or yourself better, right? And we're going to do it this right. So we go through the history of where they're coming from, what their goals are, what they're trying to get out of the workouts, what they've been challenged with in the past, right? Any injury history, that kind of thing. And during that time, you're hearing how they talk about the environment. You're seeing how they look around the room, right? You're kind of reading their emotions there, right? As far as like, okay, what's kind of getting them excited here? How can I kind of talk to them in a way that, you know, they feel comfortable with and they can buy into like right away, right? So I had a dad today talking about his son who plays hockey, right? And he's talking about, you know, during it, he's talking about his side-to-side movement, like his hand-eye. And I didn't ask that. He just kind of brought it up. I was like, okay, well, you know, day-to-day, he's going to get a nice balanced approach. You know, he's been working on his lateral movement. You know, he's going to be able to really push off that right and left leg to kind of make those saves, right? So you kind of listen to them and you kind of like say it back to them, right? In a way that they're like, oh, that's exactly what I want. Like, so that is the time to start that trust building process. And you're not lying to them. You're just like, okay, you're going to get exactly what you want. Here's how we're doing it. Boom, boom, boom. Right. We talk to them in a language that they understand and they get, and the kid gets, and they're excited. So, you know,
so and that's a great example. A hockey player, that walks in here and they see, you know, field athletes working out or whatever. They can't even identify them. How do you tell that parent that what you're going to do with them is going to be a program that's going to help them be a better athlete? And that parent is like, no, I want a better hockey player.
So, and that's where you really get into, okay, how does my program, how it looks on there, how can I talk to them in a way that I can translate almost everything on here to their performance on the ice, right? All right, so maybe we have like just using that day, for example, right? So front squat, okay, leg power, leg strength, lower body strength. That's an easy, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That'll help.
Transfers, right?
Right, okay, midline, sure. Core always helps, right? Being able to resist flexion when needed is immensely important. Okay, a carry, posture as a goalie, immensely important. You can't have rounded shoulders and be athletic and react to everything coming your way, right? Oh, curtsy lunge. Goalies got to be on their knees a lot, right? They got to go be able to get down and up very quickly, right? So having 4-range of motion. Oh, pigeon stretch. Got to have great hip, right? So you know, there's usually always a way to relate it back to. And again, you're not a snake oil salesman. You're not lying to them. You're just letting them know, like, hey, these things are building better athletes, right? And better athletes. This will apply across a lot of sports, right? Not just hockey, right? Now, while every parent, you know, wants their kid to be better, like their sport of choice, their kid's sport of choice, sure, right? Sometimes they get a little bit kind of confused as far as like what that looks like in a training environment. Like they think they need to be on slide boards the whole time, you know, with like a stick in their hands. Like, no, probably not, you know, but like that's not going to happen. But here's what we are going to do, you know. So it's kind of a way, again, you just got to speak them in language that they trust and understand, and relate what you're doing to what they want to get out of it.
It's managing expectations,
Right.
And the expectation is that your son or daughter or you are going to be moving better,
Right.
right? And that sometimes doesn't set a light off in there.
Right.
They might say, well, how does that translate to performance on the ice? Well, your son's on the ice probably like 20 hours a week.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
they get
he
enough
doesn't-
ice work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Enough ice work. I'm sure he knows
Yeah.
how to skate just
Yeah.
fine.
Right.
So that's why you're here, because
Right.
you want them to move better, be a better athlete, prevent injury.
Yeah,
right?
that's resiliency is a huge part, I think, and obviously being in this environment, it's becoming even more apparent that I really stress is like, hey, we're going to give them a balanced approach, maybe some movements that they won't do on the court or ice or field, whatever, because that's going to make them more resilient and resistant to injury, because overuse is a real thing. And I know you're here probably because of that. Your probably kid has dealt with that in the past. And like, yeah, Johnny had so it's, they go back to like, you're right. So I think when you start kind of meeting them in the middle and kind of talk to them like in real terms, and hey, this is how it really is out there. Like, I know they're playing a lot. I know they're doing a lot of activity, right? Let's make sure they can perform for a long time, not this upcoming season. Like, do you want to have your kid go to college? Yeah, I want him to go to scholarship. Okay, well, he's 13 right now, and his arm's about to fall off. So let's make sure he's balanced, let's make sure he's using his legs when he throws the ball, then it starts to get a little, I'm not talking to them like that necessarily, but I'm like,
Sure.
but I am talking to them, making sure they know the importance, of choosing a program that will give them a balanced approach, right? And a balanced, set of movements to make sure they're resilient athletes.
I can honestly say in the time we've been working together, which has almost been a year now, I haven't seen not one parent walk from the front to the back to where Jordan is, which they can see from the waiting room, and be like, "What? Why are you doing that with my son or daughter, or anybody for that matter?" Like, no one questions like why you're doing what you're doing, because they see that their son or daughter is like they're working,
Right.
And it's really cool to see that when he's got 6 different types of athletes in front of him all at once.
Thanks.
So all right, throw it at me. What else do you got for me? This is you've thrown in so many pearls, dude. I know how to train like Jordan now. so
I think honestly, when it comes down to for me is I love the process. We had someone ask me today, like, when are you going on vacation? And I said, what do you mean? I don't have anything planned. I'm not really a big vacation guy. And he's like flabbergasted, like, well, you're not a big vacation guy.
I've heard that once or twice.
It's like, I don't know. I just love what I do. I love coming in here. I love working with the kids. I like, being here for them and seeing them get better. And like, I love, them coming in here, leaving here, feeling better every day. And I love seeing that on the field, right? And them getting a scholarship. Like, I just enjoy it to an extent that I don't feel like I need that escape, so to speak. But that being said, right, the learning process is also something I really enjoy, right? Learning from, things I see, things I see from you, things I read, things I hear, right? Things, mistakes I've done in the past, right? I'm always trying to get better, right? I've just, picked up golfing, and I'm so frustrated at it, but like, I cannot stop because I just love, I'm sitting there whacking balls, and Mike's trying to, treat his client. I'm like, sorry.
He had 3 balls in like 15 minutes, so it's really not a distraction. I'm just saying, what is he doing over there? And he's just like practicing on his back.
Oh yeah, we got the 3D strap, right? And I'm sitting there doing rotational hip tilts, and people look at me like I'm crazy. But again, it's you're experimenting, right? The fun thing about this stuff is you can experiment, you can try things out, right? You can learn, right? You can constantly be learning and getting better, not only from a physical aspect or from the mental side, and then that in turn directly affects your clients that are coming in that day. And if I can make that program just 1% better that day, like that, it's all worth it. You know what I mean?
I got goosebumps.
So
that's awesome, dude. I
Thanks,
love it, every second of it. This has been an absolute pleasure. How can we get in touch with you? How can our audience get in touch with you?
So Instagram is jq.training. My Gmail, if you want to use that, is jordan.quinones@gmail.com. Very easy. That's the main ways.
You guys are missing out if you're not getting in here and talking to this guy. At least have a meeting with him. Leave reviews. This has probably been one of my favorite podcasts that we've done. This is dope. Jordan, I know we hang out every day, and I see his goofy rear end over there leaning against the ball sometimes, and he's thinking like thinking man, and I know he's programming, like he's like reading an article.
Yeah,
like
if I have
thinking
the
about
old hand on the chin, you know, that's the program look for sure.
I love it, every second of it. This is awesome. You guys know how to reach him on Instagram, and you got his email address. That's big time stuff. All right, thank you guys. That wraps it up.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We'll do it again soon.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It would mean so much to me if you could leave us a 5-star review so more listeners like you could get this important information. See you next time.